But yeah, when I think about, how I won the Worlds just a couple weeks or a month ago or whatever it's been now, um, you know, I think back to that time and how nothing that I've ever done has just been me.
Hello, and welcome back or welcome to the Water Ski Podcast. This is Matteo, your host, and the goal of this podcast is to promote the great sport of water skiing. My favorite sport, probably your favorite sport, and if it isn't your favorite sport yet, hopefully this podcast will make you think otherwise. This is the second part of my interview with Dorien Llewellyn. This interview occurred about 2 months ago now. So any time references to episodes like Worlds say are a little, obviously, 2 months. You have to add 2 months to those time references. But one of the things I want to share is, as you know, I do these little intros. I take bits of the interview just to start the episode with. And it took me a long time to find the right one for this second part. This is a long second part, but it really couldn't be any other way with this guest. And I chose this short one, which I think after you'll hear the episode, you'll wonder why I chose that one. But the reason is that I think it encapsulates who I understand Dorien to be after these few hours that we spent together chatting it up. And the strong sense of community and team that he has within water skiing, I think really exemplifies the character. Now, we talk a lot of things in this interview, including Dorien opening up to his preparation for the World Championships and how he had to struggle with burnout. Now, I recorded an episode talking about burnout, and Dorien and I talked off record about the possibility of sharing this, and I was very humbled that he decided to do it on my podcast. I don't know, like it's not the first time that guests share something psychologically deep when I interview them, and I just want to say it's a humbling experience to notice how comfortable guests are with me in sharing this. So I want to thank all of them, including Dorien. But a lot of things. We talk about, his relationship with Red Bull. We talk about his relationship with Dad and how that evolved as he transitioned from being a multi-sport athlete to just focusing on skiing. All the bouncing back and forth with the world records that we heard in Joel's interview. Now we hear Dorien's side. So it's a long and beautiful interview. I really want to thank Dorien for deciding to do this. Before we jump into this long second part, I just have a quick announcement. A dear friend of mine who manages a ski school here in Italy called Lake Palace is looking for some help at his ski school this summer. So if you want to spend a few months in Italy helping out at a ski school, or you know someone who would be interested in doing that, just shoot me an email, matteo@thewaterskipodcast.com, and I'll put you in touch with the management there to see if things can work out. So again, if you or you know someone that wants to work in Italy in a ski school for a couple of months, just shoot me an email at matteo@thewaterskipodcast.com. And that's about it. I'm very happy to share this second part of my interview with Dorien Llewellyn. Enjoy. All right, Dorien, we're back from a little break. Look, I think it's time to just talk, we went to the Masters. We already alluded to the fact that, after high school, you pretty much made the decision of, skiing is what I want to do and what I want to pursue. Let's and you allude, like you talked about an injury, but I'm more curious to, obviously, mentally or like day to day, how was it to now just be a one sport athlete, which was your first time really?
Yeah. So yeah, when I finished high school, and like we said, I kind of got this feeling that even though like my ego still says I could have done it, I could have kept playing hockey. I I just, yeah, there was this feeling that I wanted to ski. So that obviously made the transition really easy because there was this innate desire to become the best in the world at skiing. And um, yeah, no, I just, it's really interesting because I talk to people about how just transitioning from one sport to another, and not feeling like I failed in hockey, even though I didn't achieve everything that I wanted to. And I even did my senior year. It's called a capstone. It's like your last class that you take as a senior at Rollins, and we had to do basically a TED talk, and I did it all on experiencing success and failure in sports, and like what I just said, not having achieved in hockey, but not feeling like I have any regrets or failure. But then I wonder, am I being a bit of a hypocrite because I moved from one high level sport and went into professional skiing? So it's like I quote unquote gave up on one dream to pursue another one. It's not like I was forced to stop playing hockey without having any other plan afterwards. And maybe that's the answer right there. Maybe, always knowing what you want to do after, because, for all of us, one day sports will end and we have to do something after. And, whether it's golfing just for fun, if you have the money and that's all you can do or want to do, then go for it. If it's something to do with school, like for me, I'm going to Rollins and I took physics, and then going to Lafayette now and getting an engineering degree, and knowing that maybe one day I'd want to work on, either aerospace designs or work on electric boats, or even do something like the movie Ready Player One. I don't know if people have seen that, but step into this virtual reality world, which I have my like ups and downs about whether or not that'd be a good thing for all of us, but just to be able to create something for people to, go into their own mind and find out what they really want or whatever, we don't have to talk about that. Just having that backup plan or that second plan afterwards, and knowing something that you want to do so that you're not finishing your sport. And like I said, I didn't play hockey for 3 years after. And again, it was partly because I got injured, but it was also partly because I was just so sad that I wasn't playing hockey anymore. And I missed it so much that I didn't want to step on the ice. And now that I'm back playing again, it's, oh my God, it's so fun. But I had that second option in skiing, which, even the guys today, I played with a couple guys that are currently playing at Union College. And when we left, they were like, man, we picked the wrong sport. We should be going to Australia and to Europe and this and that. And I was like, man, you guys don't understand. Right. Sometimes I think the same thing about you. Like, how cool is it to go into a stadium filled with 30,000 people, score a goal, do a cool celebration, or like what the guys are doing nowadays, throwing their stick into the crowd when it's the final goal of the game, and you got all these fans reaching for your stick, and there's benefits to both sides. But to have that second option, I was blessed to have that. And that, that I didn't say this earlier, that's kind of the reason why I went and played hockey first and put that ahead of skiing for a while, because I knew that with my parents being who they are and the coaching level that I was going to get coming back, I felt like I was good enough and had a good enough coaching to make it still as a skier. So
so coaching, resources, like weather. Yeah, you had the setup for your second option in case,
Yeah.
But I guess I was more thinking, and you kind of said it, like, you didn't step on the ice for 3 years, but I think it's more like routine, right? So throughout those years you were doing both.
Yeah.
And when you're a multi-sport athlete, there's always that, the season is over here, it's gonna start there, or like maybe this ski season wasn't that good, but hopefully hockey will be better. Like once you become a single sport athlete, that those things kind of disappear a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, when I really think about it, well, first of all, this shows you how conflicted I was even when I stopped. I Arizona State, the team went from being a club team to a D1 team over the course of the year that I was going to start college. And so right away, I signed up, or I applied, started writing to the coach, and thought about, oh, I could still do this. I could do both. I could go play D1 hockey at Arizona State, and I could also ski. Um, and then slowly I started to realize at some point you got to decide. And
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of what we talked about at the beginning was about how my parents didn't force me to do anything, and how I played a lot of different sports growing up. And I think that's awesome. Like, to be a well-rounded athlete is so important, to have a good foundation before you really delve into one sport. As much as people are specializing early nowadays, I mean, you got guys like Mati Gonzalez and Jake Abelson and all these guys that are so good, so young, that you almost wonder, how can I afford not to start training tricks year round to keep up with these guys? But I mean, for me, I'm just of that opinion that doing a bunch of sports will always help you in the end. And just to be
And your opinion, if I may interject, your opinion is well supported by research as well, right? So you are more guarded against burnout if you have a history of multi-sport athletes, playing multi-sports. And it's also shared by a lot of, like, say, collegiate football coaches. So I know that, like, before you went to NFL, like, Urban Myers was looking a lot for multi-sport athletes. So I've heard about Nick Saban. So, like, all these high level football coaches are looking for athletes who have had multiple experiences. Now, generally in American football is some type of combination of football and track, football and basketball, football and baseball, something like that. But they are looking for that type of experience prior to, of course, once they get there, possibly, like, I mean, almost always specializing in that sport.
Yeah.
Although you still see some college athletes that do, like, baseball and football, or football and track.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even, Kyler Murray and other guys like Russell Wilson who were drafted into 2 different professional leagues, which is incredible. Also really cool that, I'm kind of throwing out ideas and then you're backing me up with the science. So, we're already working in tandem here. It's perfect.
Perfect.
But yes,
I promise I will also go against when you say something wrong.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, and when I think about it, even when I got to Rollins, I still have that competitive drive in me in everything that I do. And while first of all, obviously the injury is a huge part of getting that transition, and not missing hockey as much at the beginning because I was so worried about just getting back in general, that it was not easy, but it was easier to let go of hockey because of how worried I was that I wasn't going to be back healthy at all. But that being said, I mean, I had the support of Red Bull, and I went to the Red Bull training center in Austria for 3 months. And, no offense to the PT work here, but my experience when I got back was that at 6 months post-op, I was doing more in Austria at 4 months than I was here 6 or 7 or 8 months post-op. So it's the Red Bull Center, and it's where all the top people go. I mean, without being biased, I think it's pretty clear that Red Bull does everything to the max, and they're the best at almost everything that they do. So I was getting the best treatment and the best, physio, best, actually my physio, she's awesome. She doesn't work there anymore, but, Maria, she could do dry needling, cupping, and, acupuncture. We were doing physio, just everything that you could possibly think of in the physio realm. Anyway, so yeah, that made the transition a little easier. And I was so worried about coming back for skiing. And then, when I went to Rollins, I also, like I said, I took physics. Most people ask me why when I say that. And my answer is, no, I don't really know. It was that my dad said that engineering was a really sought after job, and that there weren't a lot of engineers, and most people didn't finish the program. And we didn't really have an engineering program at Rollins. And not, at least not one that you could finish at Rollins. You had to go to another school and finish there. And that was either in New York at Columbia or up in Auburn or Washington. And I didn't want to leave the state again. So I just did physics, and, it was that challenge of having something really hard and being not afraid to fail. And and I enjoyed that. So even when I was at Rollins and I had the opportunity to ski every day, I was still doing a lot of other stuff, and that may have held back my skiing again a little bit. If I'd been able to take an easier degree, I might have been able to ski more. But I mean, I can't really complain. I was driving to Jack's all the time, going skiing out there. I was going to Jason Seal's place. Went to Matt's a couple times. Went to Drew's. Went to Ronnie's. Skied at school with Mark, with the coach, and that was awesome. He's one of the best guys that I've met in this sport. Just so funny. And also a really good skier. I mean, he's still tricking like 6,200 points, I think is the record he just set this year for, I don't know, one of the men's categories.
6, 7, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so even that, like I never fully transitioned into just skiing until recently when I finished Rollins, and then I fully just was skiing. And to really answer your question now, when I actually got the opportunity to only ski and to feel like this is all I'm doing, it was really eye-opening how much the school and the hockey and everything, I don't want to say held me back, but just held me from fully diving into being a professional athlete. I realized like I was starting to go to the gym every day in the off season for multiple hours, like, an hour of cardio mixed with an hour of weightlifting or more. And then also skiing a little bit at the time, or skiing and also going to do other things, but then to just have everything be like to the betterment of my skiing was really cool for me. I really love that. And it made me feel fully like a professional. So, to make an easy question really long-winded, that's been my last couple of years. And like you said, I did kind of go overboard this year, earlier this year. And yeah, like that is, I guess, one of the great things about being able to do multiple sports, but also, knowing when to cut back and to save your energy and your mental energy as well. Because yeah, I went through a pretty tough stretch at the beginning of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how it went from multi-sport and school away from home to single sport, school roughly at home, but not really, because Rollins is not close to your hometown, to then eventually just recently all about your skiing.
Yeah.
Right. So I wonder if that progression was the reason why now you fully appreciated, being solely dedicated and your day revolving around, your skiing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a curious path, and one certainly of appreciation. It seems pretty clear with you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious. Maybe the answer is simple. Why Rollins? I'm not gonna ask you why physics, because you said you don't know. But why Rollins?
Rollins was actually the one school that I had any ties to in general before I even got there. My uncle went there, Craig. He went late after his career was over. He had a knee injury as well, and then it was going to be tough for him to come back, and it was bad timing because that was when the sport was really evolving. When we went from short jump skis to long jump skis, and a lot of different technical aspects that changed. So for him, it was kind of just wrong place, wrong time to get injured, and when he came back, it just wasn't the same sport, and he was just kind of, he wanted to move on to the next stage of his life. And he went to Rollins. I think he was 33 or 31 or 33 when he started. He met my aunt there. It was funny. She was a 22-year-old freshman, and he was I want to say a 31-year-old senior. She was a 22-year-old senior, and he was a 31-year-old freshman. Which it's awesome the way that you meet people like that in different facets of your life. And she was a skier, and they both skied at school together. And so
she was a skier also.
Yeah. She still
cool.
loves skiing. Her family skis. Hopefully the 3 little nephews are listening right now. But those guys are awesome. I got to ski with them a little bit, and they all live in Martindale in Texas at the River Ranch.
All right.
Yeah, great kids. Saw them at the U.S. Open this year, and they're all loving skiing, and I hope that they just keep working at it because they have so much fun doing it, and I had fun skiing with them. But so Rollins was the one school I had a little bit of connection, and then I started looking at other schools, and it just came naturally to me that I was going to end up somewhere close, like you said, to home. I did drive home a lot, like I would say every other weekend I was here skiing at home with my parents. I did apply to like the California schools. That's when I said at the beginning, that whole story with my mom. I wrote about that for the California school admissions. Um, and then Arizona State and all those kind of schools, and UT Austin and that. But yeah, just Rollins. I was blown away when I went for my visit, and just kind of knew that I wanted to stay in Orlando and really pursue skiing again.
Yeah, and I think what you said in part one makes a lot of sense, right? You already had, like, I think a huge component of an American high school student is, let me get out of here with college. Like, that's your opportunity to get away and experience, like being independent, being a grown up. By the time you started college, you already had that experience plenty, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't about the big school, the go away. So I can see why, like Rollins, between the connections with your uncle and what you had experienced before, made sense. It just seemed like the logical school. And then you pair the fact that now you're skiing and you're not doing other sports. You're in Florida, which helps.
Yeah.
No, it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's also little things that I noticed before I went, and also when I got there, that made a big difference in why I chose, or what the feel was of the school. And people always talk about you'll feel it when you go to the school, and some people do, some people don't. But like the little things for me was something like the size of the school. Like Rollins is only 2,000 kids, which is tiny for a college. But my high school had 90 kids when we graduated, and when I graduated in middle school, there were 10 in my class.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from small school to small school, and then Rollins, to me, even just at 2,000 kids, I knew most people, but it still felt, the first couple of weeks, it felt big. So if I had been at a UCF or something where they say, you see somebody your first day, you don't see them until you graduate. I don't think that I would have loved that. And now that I'm towards the end of, I guess, my college career a little bit more, and I could handle that now because I'm doing my own thing. But for me to go to a school and to be there and to have fun and be kind of a normal college kid. I never fully had the normal college experience because I was obviously coming home every other weekend, and guys actually at school, it would make me laugh, but it was a bit tough at times, that every time I'd see somebody, they'd be like, "Oh man, haven't seen you in so long. Where you been?" And it didn't bother me because I knew there was something that I wanted, and I was, I'd give up so many weekends with the guys at school or going out, and it just didn't bother me because I knew that I wanted to be the best skier that I could be, and so I loved college for what it was, and I do miss it at times, but yeah, Rollins was a great place for me to be able to ski and also kind of start to have that college experience a little bit.
Yeah. So like that perfect place where to fit your now full commitment to water skiing.
Yeah.
Now, I know you've listened to the podcast before, and I have this question that I ask to a lot of guests, and I think maybe with you now is the time to ask for it. Okay. And you'll understand when I ask it, which is, if there was a moment when those years more recently, when you felt you were good, like it clicked on you that, man, I'm a good skier now. And I ask it now, because generally with guests that have achieved in skiing like you, I ask it before, because generally the multi-sport commitment is not common, sadly. But I'm asking it now because now in this part of our journey, you're just skiing.
Yeah. No, and I laugh because I'm almost a little bit scared about what I'm going to say. It's tough because without, there was, I was a bit entitled as a kid. I was given every opportunity to be the best that I could be in school and skiing and hockey. And, a quick side note, I guess. For me, you hear about all these athletes that have nothing growing up, and their stories are amazing. But at the same time, obviously, you don't want to wish that on anybody. But I had almost the opposite of a lot of the kids that make it because they need to. I was given every opportunity to be the best, that I could be. And because of that, I felt like it was my duty to make the most of it. Like, you know, if somebody makes the joke, oh, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Well, then I say, yeah, but I used that spoon and I ate with it. So like, it's not like I'm just sitting here with the spoon. And that's why I pushed myself when I went to Groton up in Boston. You know, I wanted to have those grades that I could be just like everybody else and make it to those Ivy League schools. And when I got back, even though I, you know, decided not to go that route and not go to quote unquote a top school. I mean, Rollins is a great school, but when I left, you know, some of the people were like, you've worked so hard here. Like, not that, you know, you kind of deserve to go to one of these big schools. And with skiing, the same thing. Like, I work so hard and sometimes I get too intense because I just want it so bad because of all the opportunity I've been given. I feel like, you know, it's my job to make the most of this. So, anyway.
But that's, and look, I think it's beautiful. Once again, your self-awareness is keen. But I'm thinking more emotionally now.
Yeah.
You know, like it might not have been a win. It might have been something you did. Like, did you ever have a moment like very visceral where you said, okay, I'm going somewhere here?
Okay, yeah. So I kind of brought that up to preface why I feel this way almost, because when I was growing up, I watched my parents and I watched them be the best in the world. And you know, it's funny that how much I talk about I wanted to be a professional hockey player, because since I was, I don't know, 11, well, no, that's probably too early, but 15, 16, like I started to get that sense of, I want to be a world champion. I want to break the world record. Like I want to be like my parents. And I started to get that feeling of, you know, I want to be better than my dad was. And people laugh when I say that, like, oh, why are you so fixated on your dad? Well, at the end of the day, I said at the beginning, my dad's the best skier of all time. So if you want to be the best skier of all time, you have to be better than him. And it just happens that he's in the same house as me.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, early, like 16, 15, like, and I said this earlier, like, that's why I felt comfortable leaving to go to play hockey in Boston, because I felt like because of who my parents were and because of the talent that I'd already displayed as a junior, that, you know, even if I took some time off, I could still get back. And I did a video with my dad a couple years ago in Canada, and I discussed this in the video because that it's almost like I'm answering your question backwards. You know, I assume that if I just worked hard enough, this is exactly what I said in the video. By the way, it's funny that I just said it again.
Right.
I assume that if I worked hard enough, that eventually I would get there, that I would be a world champion, I'd be a world record holder. And only when I did that video in those last couple of years, I think I was 21-ish or 20, only in those years before that did I start to realize, okay, this is really hard. Like, this is not something, and, you know, I don't want to sound super full of myself. This is not at all what I mean to say, but there was one time I remember asking my mom when we were discussing if I wanted to come back and ski or if I wanted to keep playing hockey. And I said, I don't want to choose skiing because I feel like it's the quote unquote easier route. Like, if I want to play hockey, and even if I have to go move from city to city and state to state or country to country, if that's what I want to do, I want to do it. And on the other hand, even if skiing had been the same, you know, I made a joke one time to an ex-girlfriend's family member who asked me how much money you could make in skiing. And I said, if it was only me, I wouldn't care if I lived in a trailer as long as I am enjoying skiing. So I didn't say that in terms of, you know, I felt like, oh, I'm going to make it no matter what in skiing. But I knew from a beginning that I had this base that my dad gave me and my mom gave me and coaches gave me that I could progress quickly if I put in the time. And so I went to school knowing that I could come back and still make it as a skier. And then when I got back, I started to realize how hard it was going to be. And then, you know, it was, like I said, it was backwards. Like I realized, wow, this is so, it made me realize how impressive it was that my dad was a 9-time world champion and my mom was a 2-time world champion. Because I've mentioned it a couple times now that, you know, I always push to be a world champion, but I'm not going to lie to you, like, especially in the last couple of years, you know, with this super quick rise of Joel Poland. I mean, I I had the Martin Colemans in front of me and this Adam Sadelmeyers, and I looked up to those guys and I looked up to my dad, but everybody was older than me. And I mean, Danilo was really good and Louis is really good, but then all of a sudden Joel came on so fast, and it was the first time that I was actually scared. Like, I thought, oh my God, this guy is so good. And I'm sure it's going to happen again. Like the guys I just mentioned, Louis, Danilo, guys like Rob, who are now starting to get unreal at overall as well. I'm sure I'm going to be taken off guard at some point again by somebody that's coming up. But Joel was the first guy where I was like, dude, this is bad. Like, this is in a good way. But he's pushed me so hard in the last couple of years, but it was the first time that I was scared that I would never be a world champion and that I would never break the world record. That's something that I've thought about, especially the last 2 years. Like I said, that how am I gonna feel and how am I gonna look at myself in 20 years if I never win the worlds? And that's what it also takes me back to what I said earlier about doing that TED talk, like about regret and not feeling like you failed even if you don't achieve everything you want. And I sat in my room here a couple times and thought, how can you say that and now you're scared that if you never win the worlds that you're going to feel like a failure? And I mean, I can't tell you that I'll ever know the answer to that question, and there's a piece of me that is kind of happy about it, and I'll definitely do soul searching for the rest of my life to know, how do you cope with coming up short? But yeah, I mean, that is totally not what you asked at all, but it went.
No, but I like how you answered it. Like, you might have felt that you were good before. I'm paraphrasing here. Like, you might have felt you were good until you decided you want to be really good, and you realized that it wasn't as easy as you thought it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, well, I'm still hopeful that through this interview we'll find that moment. Who knows? Maybe it was the Worlds this year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or the world record. But let's get there. Let's get there. Because I laughed midway when you talked about Joel, because obviously in his interview he said the exact same thing about you, meaning, being caught off guard, or like his words were like, oh man, I did the world record and I knew that I woke him up now. You know? So things like that.
I know. I actually had the exact same thought last year, with the world record that got denied. I was working so hard to get that all year, and all of a sudden I broke it at the end of the year. And then we went into the off season, and I must say, for that first month or month and a half, I went to Europe and we went snow skiing with Janina and her family and my family, and had the best off season that I'd had. Maybe this one will be better, who knows? But I was so relaxed and so like I kind of started to open up a little bit just a couple of minutes ago, like that pressure that I felt from being in the family that I'm in, and to finally have that release of like, oh, I accomplished something that I've thought about. Like since I was 16. I mean, you asked, when did you think you were good? I already had this mentality that I wanted to break the world record at 16. Like, who in their right mind is thinking about that at 16?
Right.
And so, yeah, I had this release of all this pressure. And then when the season started again, I guess that was this year, I started to think, man, I probably just poked the bear. Like, Joel's going to come back so hard. And I was not necessarily scared, but I didn't want to be the guy that broke the world record and then took his foot off the gas and then fell behind. So, I mean, I've mentioned it a couple times that mentality drove me to work super hard in the off season. But at the same time, I worked too hard. I did too much. And I guess, I've mentioned it a couple times, I might as well get into it now. And I haven't talked about this with very many people. Probably only a handful of people in the world know this. But yeah, so at the beginning of this year, I was working out really hard. I was working out about probably 4 days a week. I was starting to do school again. So obviously mentally that's taxing. I was playing hockey about 3 days a week. And then, mid-January I started skiing. So I was skiing 5 days a week. And hockey, so I'd ski Monday, I'd play hockey Monday nights with my dad on a men's league team, which is so fun. It's ridiculously fun. Right. But a lot of those games would be, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and we'd finish at 11, sometimes 11:30, and then I'd wake up the next morning to do the skate that I did this morning, which was with some of the best guys in Florida, but it's always at 7 or 6:45 a.m. So I'd be going to bed at 12 by the time I get to sleep after a hockey game. You're talking 12:30, and then I'm getting up at 5:45 and I'm going to hockey, and then I'm coming back home and I'm skiing, and then I'm doing homework, and then I'm going to the gym. And I did that for probably a month. And I started to realize, man, I'm tired. This is getting pretty hard. I started falling asleep like while I was doing my homework. And then I don't know, about March. So let's say like a month and a half of doing that schedule. And all I kept thinking was, man, I'm working so hard. Like, this is so good. I'm gonna be so strong this year. I'm gonna be like just firing as soon as the season starts. And then I remember so clearly. Also, I wasn't sure if I was gonna bring this up, but that was about the same time that Joel started posting some videos on Instagram, and I was just sitting at home watching these, just thinking, man, how does he do this stuff? And right. That was obviously in the back of my mind. So now I'm pushing myself harder. And then I remember so clearly, I lost the document. I wrote this document on March 22nd. And I wrote it out and I said, it's March 22nd. I'm sitting at home and I'm just trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Sorry. And I wrote out this huge long document, and I couldn't figure out what felt wrong. And I just kept looking out at the lake, and I've said multiple times now how appreciative I am of everything that I've been given. And I just kept looking at the lake and I didn't feel that. And I was just like, I didn't understand why, because I was one of those people that loved life and loved everything about it, and just kept looking at the lake, and I just kept feeling anxiety and didn't know how I was feeling at all, and just felt terrible. And I must also, I haven't really said this to her, but my ex-girlfriend, who we're still super close and family friends, and she had anxiety when we were dating, and every now and then she'd be like, hey, I'm having some anxiety, like. And this was when I had my knee injury, so I was getting mad at everything anyway. But I meant to apologize to her, because I never understood what that meant. Like, just if you have anxiety, just tell yourself it's fine, breathe, and move on. Like, no big deal. And now I have a completely different feel of that because of this, and I apologize to her. I'll do it publicly right now, for being hard at times, being difficult. But anyway, so yeah, and then I went through that for about a week and just kind of was like up and down. And I kept getting these like anxiety moments where all of a sudden I would just like freak out and wasn't really telling anybody. And after a week, this is where I think having a sports psychologist for so long it's made me more open to talk about this kind of stuff, and just to share with people in general. But then a week later, my mom and I were home by ourselves. And I don't know where everybody else was, but it was just the two of us, and we were watching a movie together. And I started getting anxiety again, and I looked at her, and it took me a while to get this out of my mouth, but I looked at her for about 10 minutes, and I just turned, and I wasn't even watching the movie anymore. And after a while, she realized, and she's like kind of looking at me thinking, what are you doing? Like, the movie's that way. And I eventually got it out. I was just like, Mom, like, I don't feel right. Like, something's wrong. And so then for a couple days I didn't ski, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And again, I'm just going through up and down cycles. And then we finally figured out, I was thinking, do I want to go to New York and hang out with my friends from high school? And as much as I want to do that, New York's a tiring place in general. Like, you can definitely get tired. And I knew I was tired, and I stopped skiing, stopped playing hockey for a little bit. And eventually I figured out that my best bet, even though the jet lag was obviously tough and traveling, but my best bet was to go to Austria, to go to the Red Bull Center there, and to kind of have another preseason for me. And to go, and this is probably the biggest part, is to go hang out with Sebastian, with my cousin. And I knew that if there was one person in the world that would be able to sit there on a couch with me and just play video games for 12 hours straight, like, that was the guy. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was so nice having him there for the Worlds, because, he means so much to me for that. And There's so many people that have helped me in so many different times in my life. But to have him there and to know that I could rely on him, and for him to just say, dude, I'll sit here for hours with you every day. And we legitimately, for the first 4 days, just played video games. We went snow skiing one day, but even that, like, that was tough. Like, I went to Austria and there was still snow, and I went skiing, and the next day we went to go skiing again, and then I just sat up in my room and I just was having all this stress again. And my mom came up and I was like, I can't go skiing today. Like, I can't do it. And anyway, yeah. So I hung out with him. I relaxed. I rested. I went to the Red Bull Center. I got some PT to work. I talked to the physios there, or the sports psychs there, and started doing more meditation to try to figure out, like, how to not control my thoughts, but to be at peace with my thoughts. And I still don't do meditation as much as I should. And I used it as a tool to get myself back on track. And I used it afterwards because I realized how special it was. And yet, now I only do it once in a while, and I really need to get back on it. But, yeah. So, and over the course of those 2 weeks, just letting myself heal, like, both physically and mentally, like, that was the biggest thing, was give yourself a chance to rest and relax. And, it's hard to put into words the feelings that I had when I was going through that. Like, but the way I can best describe it is what I said before with looking out at the lake, and for the first time in my life, not being appreciative of what I'd been given, and not having a smile on my face. And that was the one thing that kind of let me feel like I felt okay. And this sounds so full of myself in a way, but when I would see myself in the mirror, I would still smile, and not a forced smile, but it was just a genuine, like, I still like who I am. I'm still that same person. There's just something that I'm going through right now, and I need to, help myself to get there. And yeah, like I said, that feeling. And also, I got this feeling of, like, I couldn't picture what it would look like to compete. Like, I didn't think I could compete. And it wasn't just the top guys, like, not just Coleman, Joel, Sledge, Danilo. Like, it was anybody. Like, I didn't feel like I could physically go out and ski against anybody at the moment. And that's where I kind of realized, like, something needs to change, because, I'm not feeling great. Yeah. And, I posted this on Instagram just a couple days ago. Like, my biggest takeaway from all that is, find that support network, first of all, before you need it. And, be open to sharing with them, and always kind of check in with yourself, but also with them. And it's not weakness to say that. Like, for me to say that to my mom, that I wasn't feeling right. Like, I didn't feel, I felt broken in a way at the time because of how tired I was, but I didn't feel weak for admitting it. I felt like it was the first step towards feeling better. And it's funny. I get emotional, not at the thought of how bad I felt, but more of, like, the people there. And this is kind of this is the message I'm trying to drive home, is, like, when I'm, I don't know, in 20 years, the thing that I'm going to remember about that time period is, like my cousin and my mom and even my dad. And it was funny because, my dad is who he is, and obviously my mom is special in skiing as well. But, my mom's always, I'm a bit of a mama's boy anyway. I didn't feel bad telling her, but I didn't want to, like, with my dad, I almost didn't want to tell him, because I wanted to be strong for him. And like, I just kind of contradicted myself, because I just said it didn't feel like weakness, but, like, that, I had to get over that. And I had to tell him, because I obviously was leaving to go to Austria. So I had to tell him, and I had to tell my mom, because that was the first step towards me feeling better and to do something about it, instead of pretending like I was fine. But yeah, when I think about, how I won the Worlds just a couple weeks or a month ago, or whatever it's been now, I think back to that time, and how nothing that I've ever done has just been me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just always been a team effort, and, it's always been my parents, it's been my family, my friends, my cousin, Sebastian has always been that guy that I've turned to, my friends from school. Like, I'll start name dropping a little bit, like my buddy Cyrus and Yassine and Jake up in Boston, or when he was in Boston, when he was in Ohio State now. And I remember helping him through some of this. I don't know if he went through burnout, but like he had the same type of things where he wasn't loving hockey anymore. And I was the guy at the time that tried to help him through it. And, between being somebody that's there for other people and then also relying on other people, like, man, like that makes me so happy that I have those people. And I hope that everybody has somebody like that they can either rely on or be there for someone. Because, I mean, there's no better feeling in the world than knowing that, you can count on people and them being there for you and helping you through tough times. And that's what I said on that Instagram post, man. Like, they helped me through a really tough time. And then to have Sebastian there and have my mom there and to just like, to let all those emotions fly after I won Trick and won my first world title, like there's no better feeling than that. Like to have grown through this experience and to now feel comfortable enough to share that. And, I always get ahead of myself at the beginning of the year. I'm the kind of guy that I'll set the goal for the year to be like, I'm going to trick 12,700 points. Okay, maybe not that bad. Right. But like for the last couple years, every year I'm like, man, I want to trick 12. And my mom and my dad are like, dude, trick 11.5 first. I'm like, no, I'm going to trick 12. But the way that I always have worked is, I say I'm going to trick 12 and then I'll trick 11.5. And then at the end of the year, if I trick 11.5, I'm totally happy with it because, I shot for this, it's shoot for the stars and maybe you'll land on the moon. Like I've always acted like that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I even at the beginning of the year after I went through burnout and I wrote that whole thing and I was like, man, maybe one day I'll read that. And that's why it's kind of sad that I lost that document, which it was actually just before the Worlds. Like how weird is that the document, it just disappeared off my computer. Like I just lost it and I didn't save it because I was actually kind of like, I never read it again and I just kept it open and it was gone. It was like 2 weeks before the Worlds. And I talked to my mom and I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. Like that was kind of a big deal. And first of all, she said, you remember what you wrote. Like maybe not the exact words, but you remember the feelings. And at the same time, she said, this is just like, some people believe in signs, some don't. And she was just like, this is a sign, like you're moving on and you're going to go to the Worlds and you're going to ski awesome. And then, yeah. And this is a whole portion of my life that, you can not forget about, but like you're moving through it and now you can see the fruits of everything that you've done. And that was the cool part is having them there and hugging them and crying and just and being so happy in that moment. Like it was just the best. It was so good. It was so good.
I mean, there's so much that can result like the intensity of a positive emotion that can come from what you did, especially after overcoming challenge. I mean, one can only experience that a handful of times in a lifetime, and I think they should cherish that.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing this. I mean, burnout is not very common, but it happens.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if there's a way in which a lot of people confuse overtraining with burnout, but I think the sign where we can say that you had burnout was exactly what you said, looking at the lake and not really feeling much.
Yeah.
Because you could, if you had all that you had, the hockey, the gym, the skiing and everything, but then you would still look at the lake with the same appreciation as always, we wouldn't be here talking about burnout.
Yeah.
But that's generally the marker, and I love what you said about like the importance of a support system.
Yeah.
Like that, even with the athletes that I work with, that's generally one of the very first things that I check in on. Yeah. If they have that support system.
Yeah. No, and sorry, real quick. You said thank you for sharing. I just want to say thanks for, having this because I didn't really know what type of medium I wanted to do this through. And I knew that I wanted to tell the story. And there was a piece of me that was kind of worried. Like, we grow up idolizing guys like, rest in peace, like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and LeBron and all these guys. They go through life and you're just like, nothing can stop these guys. Like the Mamba mentality. And I have that a lot of the times in skiing. And then I also, I want to inspire that same thought when people think about me. Like I want to be that guy that people are like, man, when it comes down to it, he like did it and like got through it. so I was a bit scared almost to share that, because that's kind of the way our society still functions, is that, you keep those emotions inside. Um, and, I just felt like having gone through that and experiencing that, and like you said, it's not that common, but at the same time, the more I went through it, the more I realized how many people actually also went through it. Like athletes that I knew and I respected, and maybe it wasn't super well known, but there's a lot of more people than you would think that have gone through this, whether or not, they were super open about it or not. And as much as I want to be, the Kobe Bryant or the Michael Jordan of skiing, and show people that, when it comes down to it, every moment I seize the opportunity and I never like back down from a challenge, I'm still that same guy. And just because I went through this one, like, moment or series of moments in life, like, that's kind of, I feel like as a society, we need to get to that point where it's not seen as a weakness to share this, like I just did.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I would almost argue that the ability to recognize it and overcome it is what makes a great champion, right?
Yeah.
Sadly, it's not the same as dropping out of the sport, but sadly, we do know that burnout is one of the big predictors of dropping out of sport. So the fact that you were able to overcome that, one, by staying in the sport, two, by staying in the sport at a high level, and three, by actually getting a huge win, by you overcoming that. I mean, to me, again, rest in peace, but I think the Mamba would be pretty impressed with that.
Yeah, no, and it was really crazy, because like I said, with the whole not feeling the appreciation that I've always had in life, and I would look out at the lake, and I must say the first week or two, I didn't want to ski anymore. Like straight up, just didn't want to look at the lake. And then once I, started to realize what was wrong, and I wasn't pushing myself as hard with skiing and hockey and everything, when I slowed down, and then I started to get that feeling of like, I want to ski, but I didn't want to ski. So it was like the first step, and that, it was scary. Like, I mean, obviously everything else was scary about it, but it was scary. I talked to a neuroscientist, and he said, there's two major outcomes that you can have at this point, at where I was. He said, you're either going to get through this and you're going to come back and you're going to ski, or you're going to stop. And he just said it so matter-of-factly, and I was like, oh my God. Like, and that was good, I guess, as a reaction, because my first reaction was, oh my God, I still want to do this. Like, I don't want to stop. And yet I just didn't want to go out and do it at that moment. And so,
neuros, they don't really have the touch.
Yeah.
They do Bayesian in binary.
Yeah, the bedside manner wasn't as good as it could have been. But, as a science guy, a physics guy, like a lot of things are black and white for me. So it was kind of good for me to hear that, and to also know, like, I want to ski, but just right now, I'm not really wanting to do it at the moment. So I know that's kind of, that might sound confusing for a lot of people that are listening. I know you've like seen it and studied it. So it's a crazy experience. And again, like I said on Instagram, like I said earlier, like, no matter how big or little, like in the grand scheme of things, as scary as that experience was for me, I don't think that my experience compares to what a lot of people go through on a daily basis, or like in general. Like there are a lot of people that have way harder things that they're going through than I do, and they don't have that support system at times. And so for me, it felt like a big deal for me. At the same time, a lot of people say this, like, I didn't feel like it was that big a deal at first, and I didn't want to bother anybody with it. But at the same time, like, no matter how big or small it is, like, just tell someone, talk about it. And, it's always worth discussing. And those people that are really there for you, like my parents and my cousin and everybody that I rely on, it doesn't matter to them how big or small it is, because they just want to help you and get better. So, yeah. So look, I'm just gonna give a minor idea, like more formal idea about burnout, because I want it to be the foundation of my next question. So we do know that we have burnout when we have emotional and physical exhaustion, and we sort of saw it with you, right? You were overtaxed physically and emotionally. You probably felt you weren't achieving as much as you should have,
you said possibly watching Joel on Instagram, but also could have been in general about skiing.
Yeah.
And you weren't valuing the sport as much. And all these three have to be there for us to really talk about burnout, right? You got 2 out of the 3, tough to talk about burnout, for as unpleasant and bad as it could be. So you do what most athletes do in that case: unplug, get away, rest, right? First of all, and then eventually try again. So you did try again. How were the first few days, week, month? Was it an immediate boom, I'm back, or was it more gradual?
Yeah, it was definitely gradual. So yeah, I mean, like, that's why, again, I say that I can't really say that, as scary as it was for me, like, I feel for everybody out there that either doesn't have the support network or doesn't have the opportunity to do what I did, because I literally stopped what I was doing. And my mom, she came with me. Just, having somebody there obviously was important. And she jumped on a plane with me 4 days later, or 2 days later, and we went to Austria. And like, how many people have that opportunity, first of all, during COVID, to go into Austria, to hang out with your cousin and to just sit there and do nothing for a couple days and to just let your mind relax. Like, I feel for people that, like, especially the people in New York and places where you couldn't go outside during COVID, just being locked up inside and not being able to go anywhere, having to go to work. Like, I don't know. I want to be able to help people through stuff that I've gone through. At the same time, I don't even know where I would begin, because there's so many people that are going through so much harder stuff than I do. That anyway. So yeah, I came back and I was obviously still talking to people, like, trying to approach it in the best way possible. And I started off easy, like, just first couple of days, like 1 set, maybe 2 sets, really relaxed. And then, yeah, gradually, just over the course of the week, up and down, like, all of a sudden I'd hit a low where I started thinking about tournaments, and I was like, how am I even going to do this? Like, how am I going to compete? Like you said, undervaluing my own skill. Like, I was already skiing really well, actually. And that was another weird thing. I would ski well, like, just to throw something out there. Like, I don't know, I was like, let's say I ran 39 on a certain day, and I'd get back to the house, and then I would still think about, like, I'm not going to be competitive. But like, it didn't make sense half the time. And I think that was a big thing, is that I always, especially through the meditation, I always tried to get back to being logical. Like, take a couple seconds, breathe, think about what's going on, and go back to a logical state of mind, which one of my sports psychs said that when you take a couple seconds to breathe, you actually transition from the part of your brain that is more reactive, and you transition to the one that, is a bit more logical and a bit more proactive about what's going to happen. So yeah, just gradually over the course of a couple weeks, and it wasn't that far away from the first couple tournaments of the year. It's funny that, you mentioned Joel breaking the world record, because I wanted to ski at that exact same tournament at Kiwis at Fluid. And before burnout, I felt like I had a really good chance of doing a big score there. And then I backed out of the tournament pretty late, because I just hadn't jumped enough after taking off those 3.5, 4 weeks. I hadn't jumped enough, and I didn't want to push myself that hard. And like, having an appreciation for the sport, like, I didn't want to push myself hard and then go to a tournament and potentially injure myself for no reason. So I backed out, and a couple of weeks later, I'm still like going through all this stuff, like trying to get my mind right. And then Joel breaks the world record. And it was crazy, because the meditation and the work that I'd done, it actually let me be so much more at peace with him breaking the record. And it was something that I knew was possible, and I was trying to do it first. And obviously, like, having the first world record that I did be denied wasn't ideal, but like, it was something I knew was coming from him. And yet a lot of time before, it was something that would make me nervous. And then once he did it, it didn't affect me as much, because of how much work I had put into training my mind to just be at ease with my own thoughts.
Not reactive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, obviously still, like, the competitor in me got going again. And
of course,
actually, to take this back to one of the first questions or things that we talked about, that was right around the time when I got back from burnout and I started skiing again. Once I got going, I went up to Jack's, which was already the plan. And that was 3 weeks before the first LCQ. And then I went up there and I skied with Rob, Tanguy, was staying with Cole McCormick, skiing with Danilo, Louis, and like all of us were getting ready to try to go to the Masters, and just having that group was so fun, and for us to push each other every day, it was awesome. So that's when it really started ramping up for me again, and I started to realize how much fun that you could have skiing and still ski well.
And what a group to push each other in overall, because you got Rob, probably slalom, you trick, or let's say you jump, and then Louis trick. Like there was no way in which you could not be motivated in that environment.
Yeah, actually one day it was so cool. It was Tanguy, Danilo, myself, and then at the end, Alexei showed up. And so we all went and tricked on the back lake, just the three of us at first in the boat. And I think Tanguy skied first, had a really good set. I skied next, had a really good set. Danilo skied next, had a really good set. And then Ace came out, and he must have been so fired up because he did the best ski line 7 front to front I've ever seen. He did multiple ski line 7 back-to-backs, did super mobs, everything. I was sitting on the boat, and I was just like, dude, this guy's going to break the world record next week. And it was crazy. It was such a cool day. But yeah, like you said, all of us pushing each other, it was awesome. And that, like I just said, that kind of, I used that 3 weeks to see what would happen when I got to the first LCQ, because before big tournaments, it was customary for me to go home and to ski with my dad and to ski with my mom. And, we've touched on it before. When I'm here, that's when I'm way more technical. And at times that can lead to us being more intense because we get into the nitty gritty of the skiing. Mm-hmm. And then when I went up there, I'm still skiing with Natalia and John Travers and all those guys. And so I'm pushing myself to ski against the other guys, even in training. And we're also being technical, like Natty, being Belarusian, obviously she's technical.
She's going to dissect your toe wake line 5 like that.
Exactly. But at the same time, like I was just having fun. And then when I got to the first LCQ, I even had one day, or the day right before we left for Corey's, I didn't ski that well. And Natty was shocked, actually. And this was because of all the work that we'd done this year. I didn't ski well. I was falling on ski line 5 back, I think, or something. And I stopped the set like couple runs in, even though I fell. And first she was like, man, I've never seen you do that. Like, you're normally the kind of guy that would go for an hour before letting it go. But it was the first time that I had realized, okay, for the last 3 weeks, I've done my runs really well. And this last set is not going to make or break whether or not I ski well at this tournament. And then I went up to Corey's and I qualified as the top qualifier in trick. So it was like, it was such a good, obviously it could have gone anyway. Like I could have skied poorly or well, and it would not necessarily have had to do with, that last day. But it was such a good indicator of you can have fun skiing with all these guys and enjoy the skiing on a day-to-day basis and not get too technical all the time. And then also to let that last set go. And that, I truly believe that because of the stuff that I did to get through burnout and the work that my team as a whole put into that is why I was able to do that. And to take that even further, the day before I slalomed at the Worlds, I skied on that back lake at Jack's and I picked a bad time. I skied at like 6 or whatever it was, and it was glary, and I missed 38. And then I did 139 and I fell at 3 ball, but I got a good start. And I just wanted to try one start, and I got a good start, but I fell at 38 and I got in, and I was starting to get to that point where I was like, oh shoot, like I didn't have, my last set wasn't great. And again, same thing, like took a couple breaths, transitioned from being reactive to just kind of logical, and realized, dude, you've been running 39s almost every day. Like just, you still got this. You're still the same guy. You still have the same talent. Like go out and do your thing in tomorrow at the Worlds. And would I have loved to hang on to the handle going out the gates at 6 ball at 39? Yeah, I probably would have. But at the same time, like I skied really well at the Worlds the next day. And it started off what, I think a lot of people would agree was one of the best overall fights that we've had at a Worlds.
Of all time.
And
of all time.
So, it's been a really cool year of learning a lot about myself. And I really feel like I've matured a lot this year. And yeah, I mean, so many things to get into from that.
Well, yeah, let's do it. So let's go back to the beginning of the year, right? So of the competitive season,
Yep.
right? So you had to overcome a very intense challenge.
Yep.
And which, just a parenthesis, yes, there's always someone who's doing worse or someone who's doing better, but obviously the way in which you perceive whatever comes at you is what matters,
Yeah.
right? That's when the logical side of you can't really help you there, right?
Yeah.
But so you go first LCQ, you qualify in tricks, Joel qualifies in jump,
Yep.
right? Then you go to the next one, you qualify in jump, he qualifies in tricks.
Yeah.
And then I believe was it
the last LCQ
Louis
was actually
qualified in tricks? No,
Louis qualified at the first one with me. It was
in tricks, right?
Louis, myself, and Adam, I think.
Adam.
And then the second one was Joel, Coleman, and Ace.
Yeah, no, because I remember that like you, Louis, and Joel qualified both in tricks and jump,
Yep.
which obviously was a big window into what the year could have potentially looked like. And then off you go to Masters.
Yep.
How was Masters this year?
Masters was fun. It's always fun going. It's so much history there, and actually Sebastian, he got to come over and to kind of experience that with me, so that was cool. I'll get into this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I got a good chance to catch up with him there.
Yeah.
Like I saw him there, I was super shocked. Like, what's going on?
No, and I'll touch on this in a couple seconds, but it was cool because I didn't realize it at first, but it was the first time that he'd really been around the pro side of skiing, and he skied his whole life, and with his dad being Tanguy, like one of the coaches in the world, he'd always been to the Worlds, been to the Europeans, but he'd never really gotten to see the pro side. So yeah, he came down for the Masters, and that's where I say that I've matured a lot this year. I've been able to learn something from every tournament, and the tricks at the Masters, it was a bit of a bad mistake on my end. I hit the rope on ski line 5 back, and while I was doing it, I realized that I was going to bail and do ski line O. And so when I turned back for the next trick, my normal sequence after that would probably be ski line back to back, and then I'd finish with ski line 5. That being said, when I do that run, normally I bobble because like that's the reason why I did ski line O, and I'll lose ski line 5 at the end sometimes. So with it being the Masters and being tense, for some reason I second guessed that, and I thought no, like let's go for it. Let's do ski line 5, or ski line 5 front, and so I did ski line 5 front, hit the rope again, and then slipped and fell out the back. And right off the bat, I'm like, okay, don't do that again. Like,
right.
So anytime after that, I mean, obviously, I'm going to train doing every single sequence so that I'd never have that situation again. But for this year especially, I realized anytime that you do ski line O, you do ski line back to back second. So like to be able to take a little bit away from that and to stay in the moment, such a big sports psychology like tool is to just stay in the moment all the time. And there was a split second where I just got ahead of myself, and I thought, no, let's go for it. The scores are going to be big. I got to go. And I fell because of that. And then, shoulda, woulda, coulda. If I had just done ski line back to back, ski line 5 back, even without the ski line 5 front, I would have made the finals. So like,
which was a high cut final this year, right? I think 10.990.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, and so that it just shows you that, you never just assume that the score is going to be this or that. You just go out and you do your thing, you stand up, or you try to stand up as much as you can, and then afterwards you assess. And, there's always something that you can learn afterwards, whether you did too much or too little. And that time I just tried to do too much. That being said, I came back and I nailed my toe run, so I was kind of happy about that. But And then jump was interesting. Obviously anybody that watched this year, the Masters always tough. I think there was something going on this year, whether there was a piece of wood under the pavilion that we were hitting with the rollers or whatever it was. We were getting nice rollers coming through. The girls were getting it on the counter cut, so a couple girls you really saw their heads snap back when they were just gliding. Yeah. And then for us, every other jump or every couple jumps, somebody would get rollers right at the base. And Tua from Corey's got a really good video of me coming into the bottom of the ramp. And yeah, I obviously, we're pushing it and I slipped and crashed. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I was pretty sore the next day. Like my sciatic nerve was kind of locked down and I was kind of struggling, but grand scheme of things, I learned from it. I moved on from that Masters and wasn't my best first Open Masters, but I'll be back next year. So
it was your first Open Masters.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah, so between my injury and then coming back slowly and everything and not having I wish they had an overall competition at the Masters still. Like I always remember stories about that being the coolest thing, and because of that, I've always been close. Like I've had a couple years where I was 7th or 8th on the elite list in jump and close to it in tricks. I think 2 years ago I was 1 spot out in trick and 2 spots out in jump or something. So yeah, it's been a long time of me trying to get back.
Yeah, and you had a killer elite season in 2019, but then we didn't have Masters last year.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been a couple tough goes. But yeah, no, so that was, I mean, hey, the Masters is fun. It's always awesome being around everybody, but yeah, I mean, standing on shore, watching everybody go out and jump, it was not the way that I want it to go. So I'm going to definitely try to change that for next year.
Yeah. So more as because you had to observe the final, I'm curious to hear, obviously the talk of the weekend was, is Freddie gonna tie Andy in Masters wins? And he did. Did you take anything away from that personally?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting seeing Freddie kind of struggle a little bit in the first round, and for him to go out first is crazy. And to obviously to see him put it together in the finals, to see the poise and to just, for him to be able to assess the conditions, come back. And obviously you've seen Ryan do this all the time too, where the best guys in the world always find a way. They always, whether it's grit or whether it's tactics or, just it's almost and basically never, I mean, luck, luck is preparation means opportunity. So there's always, I mean, a bit of luck involved, but to just see him come back out in the finals and to not care, for a guy that's gone out last for a long time off the dock, to go out first and to still have that same fire and to be able to push it and figure out a way, it's always impressive. So, for next year, I mean, I just want to go back out and just kind of let myself do the same thing, forget about what I did in the whole crash and learn from it, but, not let it be on my mind.
So help me contextualize where we're at in the season. By this time, has Joel already broken the world record, or did that happen afterwards?
Yeah, he broke the world record like a week or 2 before the first LCQ. Right. So yeah, when I saw him at the first LCQ at Corey's, it was already like, walk over, dude, nice skiing. Like deep down, I'm like, I'm gonna get it back. Like, right. But you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah, no, and it took me a little longer than I was hoping. So after the Masters, which again, it kind of ties into this whole theme of, enjoying the process of being a pro skier and all that. And like I said, I was hanging out with my cousin, Sebastian, and we, for the first week after the Masters, went to Corey's. I didn't ski very much because I was still recovering and my sciatic was all locked up, so I couldn't move. And so kind of hung out, watched him and Tanguy Dayan ski. And then after that week, I actually flew home early, try to get, physio and get myself back in shape. And then the next 2 weeks were the lead up to King of Darkness. And we spent those 2 weeks, Sebastian and I, staying at the Dayan house. And I think that those 2 weeks in the King of Darkness may be the best 2 weeks I've ever had as a skier. Maybe 2 of the best weeks in my life, potentially. And And we just, every day went to the lake, tricked, jumped. I wasn't slaloming as much, but, even not tricking as much as I was jumping, and just, taking it easy, enjoying being at the lake together. Sebastian skiing again because he's got a job now, so he doesn't have as much time. But then going back to the house and jumping in the pool and playing FIFA for hours and getting really intense about that. And then, yeah.
I mean, I think that anyone who has experienced 2 weeks with the Dianes would probably mark them as some of the best weeks they ever had.
So fun.
Those guys are just like, just fun is a priority for them.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case.
And when you say that, there's a piece of me, my first little twinge in the back of my head goes, fun, but it's just, you need to be intense about skiing. But at the same time, you watch them ski. I mean, Thibaut has been one of the best overall skiers for a long time. And Tanguy, I mean, man, you saw the way he skied at the Worlds with him having a 3-4 meter PB, and then also slaloming, running 39 and blowing out his shoulder after granted at the end, he did end up just going inside 5-ball. But he ran it and then blew out his shoulder, and it sucks that he couldn't fully trick as well as he would have had he not done that. But you watch those guys and you realize that you can, like I said, you can have fun and still be at the top of your game. And that's what those weeks, again, they showed me that I went to King of Darkness just coming off that crash. So, trying not to stress too much about not being ready for jump. And then jumping well, I think I went 2:15 in the day. And typical me, I love night jumps. Oh, so fun. I went farther at night, which I've done at multiple tournaments, and I love it because actually, okay, the way I'll describe this is really good because it has to do with Tanguy. So it was Tanguy's first ever night jump. He's never done it in practice, never done it in a tournament. And he's going there and he's thinking, I just want to get 2 good rounds at Hancock. We're going to have a Mashcraft, so we're going to go far. And I want to break my PB, which was like 201 at the time. So in the first round, he goes 201, like ties it. And everybody else a couple guys slip, and he makes it into the finals. I think he was 7th. Like, wasn't even last guy in. He was a couple guys up. And so now he's standing there. He doesn't get to jump again. He's like, oh, shoot. Like, I wanted 2 rounds. Like, I'm not even allowed to ski 2 rounds. And now I got to go night jump. And he's starting to panic a little bit because he's never done it. And so then we hang out, and that night we have the night jump practice. And I am so fired up. Like I said, I love night jumps. And I'm jumping around. I'm like just yelling like, oh, I'm so ready. This is awesome. And Tanguy's looking at me and his eyes are all wide. And he's looking at me like, dude, who is this guy that I'm letting stay at my house? Like, this guy is crazy. And he goes out, first jump, does a single, and singles are hard to land in the night. Second jump, does a 3/4, and I think it was the first one that he made. So he landed the single and fell, and then he made the first 3/4, and Pipe, Thibaut, and myself, and maybe Totti and Sebastian were all standing there when he went by the dock, and we're all screaming, just like, this is awesome, so cool. And he comes back, and after we both jumped that night, he comes up to me, he goes, by the way, I totally get why you were so excited. Like, I get it now.
Loved it.
He was like, I didn't get it. I thought you were nuts before, but now I get it. Yeah, he was so excited. And then he jumped well in the dark. I think he went either just under 200, might have been like 197 or 200. And yeah, I loved it. And same thing with that. Like, I wasn't fully focusing on tricks those 2 weeks because like I said, I love night jumps, so I wanted to be ready for that. And then just having fun tricking. We're going out listening to music while we're tricking, some Justin Bieber. I'm not afraid to say that I like Jay Biebs. And just having a blast. And I go to the trick event and make it into the finals, and it's a 1v1 with me and Pato, and it was in the dark. So, anything can happen in the dark, especially in jump, but also in tricks. And yeah, I went out, stood up, and then he fell, and it was cool. Winning King of Darkness tricks. I get this really cool King of Trick trophy sitting right here, which I'm super appreciative that they made it because it's one of my cooler trophies. But yeah, just cool. Just seeing that again and seeing how much fun you can have and not be so uptight about, I need to do this and I need to compete and I need to perform. And all my runs have to be perfect, and just to go out and enjoy the process of skiing, enjoy competing, and letting that naturally bring out the best in you is, something that I've seen multiple times this year.
kind of like a grown-up version possibly of what you were experiencing in Austria.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. That is when we talked about it at the beginning, I said, that it's kind of mirroring what I did this year. And it's a perfect combination between super technical, sometimes too intense here with my dad, and then every now and then getting away and skiing with friends and going up and enjoying it just for the pure love of skiing. And that combination for me has been so far really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's a big realization when you realize that it can be intense and fun.
Yeah.
Like the two are not opposites necessarily.
Yeah.
So were you able to carry that through your preparation for Worlds and obviously through previously to the Worlds, to the world record in overall?
Yeah, for sure. I kept skiing after that really well. I was starting to ramp up again after, King of Darkness, just getting back from that crash and getting some confidence back, hitting the ramp. And then I think just like 3 weeks later, I had another tournament at Fluid. And I love skiing at Fluid. I love jacks. It's a bunch like Fischelheim, obviously in Austria, but the US sites. And that's something actually that I'd like to try, now that we're starting to set the record so high that it's getting to be really hard to break it again, obviously. I wanted to try to break it next year in Austria. But there's times where the strongest boats are sometimes they're here in the US and they're not over there. So, anyway, another tournament at Fluid, I went there and I was so mad. I tricked about 11. I think I tricked 11, 6, 10 twice, then went and jumped.
Ooh.
And jumped 224. And then the second round, I think, or 225, and then the second round 222 or 221. And then I went to slalom, and in the first round with the 225, I needed to run 3 at 39. And oh no, sorry, I'm getting them a bit backwards. So I jumped 219 first round, 225 second round. That's how it went. And the first round, I needed to run 5.5 at 39 to break the record, and I blew out my binding, which never happened. I did use a rope that I'd never used before, which made you kind of get on your ski a little harder. I'm not going to name drop, just I don't need to. But I think that was a bit of a mistake. I'd never used that rope and it just felt really different. Not to make the excuse. And I'll tell you what Sebastian said after. Because in the second round I needed to run 3 at 39 because of the big jump and a good trick score. And I blew out the fin at 1. And that's when Sebastian called me and I'm like, the rope, like, oh man. And I'm trying to make these excuses because I'm so mad. And he looked at me and he goes, dude, no matter the conditions, no matter the rope, nothing, you need to be able to run 3 at 39. Like, come on. And, logically I was like, yeah, you're right. Like that's it. I should have done that. But yeah, no, so that I was skiing really well. And then we went to Austria. We did our overall tournament, which I feel like we could have a whole nother podcast on how cool of an experience that is, to do, 3 events one day and to only have overall be the driving force behind the whole day. And also for the tournament to be 3 hours, like to have so few people is actually awesome at times. Obviously having a lot of people and being able to hang out with everybody is cool, but to have that 3-hour window, everybody skis 3 times and then you go and you enjoy going around Austria and stuff like that after. It's a special experience. And I think anybody that skied at the Austria tournament and even the one that we just had here, even with the tough conditions, I think the best part about the tournaments is the time that we get to spend together. Yeah. And then after that, went to Austria. Like I said, Austria is always somewhere that I've loved going to as a kid, and it's grown into somewhere that I cherish when I go there. And it kind of lets me rest and recharge for the rest of the season when I go there. It just kind of reminds me of, why I do this and where I started from. I guess a quick, I know this is already getting pretty long, but
Let's keep going.
A quick little side note on that whole mentality is when I broke the overall record for the first time back in what was it, 2020, I guess, when the one that eventually got denied, I was sitting at Jack's and it was right before I went to jump. And the first round I needed 223 and I jumped 220, but I wasn't jumping 223 yet. Um, and so the first round I went through it, and the second round I needed 219. And first round I went 221. And so I was close. But I honestly wasn't really expecting to break it that round. I was getting ready for the next round. And the next round, this will also kind of give you a sense of, when I said how much weight I felt from, my family history and everything about the world record and the world's. I went back to the motorhome. I kind of relaxed and tried to get ready for the next round, which was in a couple hours. And probably a good thing, I actually ended up judging. I was judging up in the tower doing the jump scoring. It kind of let me do something else and watch everybody else ski. But then as I started to warm up, my mom called, and she was in Austria at the time, and she was like, we're watching the scores and we're all rooting for you. And then I started to get teary eyed. I was like, oh my God, like this could happen. And she started crying, and then crazy Ryan, because I've been skiing with Ryan obviously a lot, and that whole backstory with my dad skiing with his dad, and then him coaching Ryan, and then Ryan now coaching me is such a cool narrative. But Ryan texted me, and I didn't text him at all that week. Like, I didn't tell him that I was skiing well. He just happened to see the scores, and he just sent me a text, and it is so cool. He sent me a text, and all he said was like, "You are ready for this. Like, you can do this." Mm-hmm. And like, even right now, I didn't even, in the end, I didn't even get to keep that record, which, it is what it is. But it makes me like kind of teary when I think about it, because he sent me that and I read it and I just started like almost bawling. I was just like, I am so ready for this. Like, I've worked so hard. But I felt like it was it. Like, this is my time. And I was so confident about it. Like, it's funny because we talked about the mama mentality. Like, that was one of those moments where I felt it and I just knew, like, I'm gonna do this. But then I went down to the dock and I was still like, I'm getting dressed. And as I sat there, it was funny because I went to Austria that summer for the first time in a couple years, in like 4 years. And it was the first time that I'd gone to the lake in 5, because the year before I had gotten hurt that 5th year. So it was the first time in 5 years that I'd been at the lake that I'd grown up skiing at. And I was sitting in the boat with everybody. And it was the first time in my life where I sat in the boat all day, and nobody asked me to. I just got in the boat and enjoyed, being there with all the kids. And I truly enjoyed them skiing instead of just me skiing. And so I sat there and I thought about that time period of that summer and how I felt. And it was just like this realization. And I wrote this down too. Like, every now and then, I have life experiences and I just like to write it down to remember. And when I wrote this, I just felt like it almost ethereal, like almost an out of body experience. Just how in that moment I realized like that's what's important. Like, yeah, the record's great and skiing well is great, but the most important thing is that those times you get to cherish with friends and family. And then I felt so at peace, and I put my skis on, and there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to go more than 219, even though going into that weekend, my record was 219, and I went 220 and 221 in the first couple rounds. So like, it was tight. It wasn't like an easy thing. And then I went 223 second jump. And boom. And yeah, I came in passed on the third. No way I was taking the third one. Which is funny because, to tie that into the world record this year, it's similar to what happened this year. And I went to Austria, went to that overall tournament, came back, went to the US Open, had a ton of fun there. Like, that night jump final was sick with Freddie going out last. And, I felt like I had a real good chance to put pressure on him, and ended up not connecting on a single jump, and still, I think 221 twice. And, so I was so pumped leaving that tournament, and, went to the next tournament at Fluid, and I was just thinking, man, I want to get redemption. Like, I was so close the last time, and, went out. Tricks is almost always first. So I went out, tricked 11, 6, 10 again, and then slalomed, and I messed up. I ran 2.5 at 39. And so I needed to go 226. And there was just something about it. The way I was going through jump and just feeling good, I don't know. I remember talking to my mom on the phone, And she was like, I got on the phone. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I messed up. Like, I messed up slalom, kind of annoyed. And she goes, yeah, it's okay. Like, next round, you'll get better next round. And there was a piece of me that was like, no. Like, and I actually I didn't even say this out loud. But in my head, I'm like, no, like, that's not what I'm thinking. Like, I'm going out and jump, and I'm going to go like 227. I'm going to beat this. And funny, talked about him multiple times, or a lot already. Talked about how he's always been in my corner. But my mom went and told Sebastian how I skied. And she said, yeah, he didn't slalom well, and he's thinking about the next round. And he told my mom, he goes, no, like, he can do this. Like, he can break this record still. And I went out and jumped, and I was so fired up. And I think I went 21 on the first jump, and I slipped. And then second jump, everything just connected. I just felt like turn was smooth. I had so much speed. I came right into the corner of the ramp. And when I lifted off the top, it just felt so fast. Like I think almost every other PB I've ever had has felt so long and so slow in the air. And this one felt so fast. I knew it was huge, but because of how fast I came off the jump, I couldn't tell. And when I landed, I looked over, and Kiwi Kyle Ead was actually sitting in the boat, and he's going nuts. He's bobbing his head. He's like, dude, you got this. Like, yeah, he's doing all these hand signs in the boat. Like, he's so pumped up. And I'm looking at him, just shaking my head like, man, if I didn't get this, I'm going to be so mad at you. And then as we're going down the lake, it was crazy because I didn't look at my dad for coaching at all. And I just kept looking at Kiwi. And I knew if it was 226 by the meters, it was going to be fine. If it was 225, it was going to be close. So if it was 225, it was going to go down to meters. If it was 226, I had it. So all I was looking for was for him to go 2-2 and then bring up two hands. And as soon as he brought up two hands, I was going to freak out. And he said, he looked at me, and I didn't really see the emotion on his face as to whether I got it or not, but he did 2 and then 3 and then 0. And I stared at him, and I was so ready for 2-2 and then something that I didn't know what happened. And I looked at him, and I was just like, what did he just show me? Like, did I just go 220?
230?
And then I ended up going 230. It was my first 230. Les is driving the boat. Les actually told me afterwards, he goes, man, I think you're the smallest guy I've ever pulled 230. And I was like, well, Les, my dad's smaller than I am. And he goes, no, you're the smallest guy I've ever pulled 230. And I was like, damn, Les, like that's tough. Right. Like, come on. But no, it was awesome. Like, that whole experience, and for Kiwi to be in the boat, because, he's helped me a lot with me coming to ski with him. And I skied with him at Rollins as well. I forgot to mention that. And, being there at that lake, which I love skiing there anyway. And, just for him to be excited, it was awesome. And, yeah, I mean, we've alluded to this a lot so far. I'm sure this is definitely, without a doubt, not the last time that somebody's going to break the world record, even, Joel's score, even though it's huge. It's going to be a battle between the two of us for years, and between the worlds, and other people are going to come into it. So it's a crazy time to be an overall skier. It's kind of an awesome time for everybody watching, and it's going to be pretty cool for us too.
Yeah, and I think, I spoke about it with Joel, but I find it interesting how, was it Sledge that had the record before? I think so, right?
Yeah.
And that lasted for a fair bit.
Yeah.
And then within the span of a year, you and Joel went back and forth twice.
Yeah.
And I want to say, maybe I don't know if you'll agree with this, but to me, it's a continuation of what Sledge showed, right? So Sledge was really, maybe Sledge, Pipe, Javi were the first ones to show, okay, if you want to be a good overall skier, it's not enough to have great tricks and jump. You got to slalom, and you got to slalom well. Yeah. And then Sledge set the record there, and then after a few years came, you and Joel, who exactly are that to the extreme. Like, you're very amazing in all three.
Yeah.
I guess, if you want to answer, I don't know, but where do you think is the improvement? Like, is it going to be 230 consistently? Is it going to be 2F41 for a record? Where are we standing there?
Yeah, no, I think, to touch on what you said first, it's obviously, no disrespect to my dad at all, But, and granted, I mean, my dad went 240. So, you know, it wasn't just him being good at trick and jump. Like, he was one of the best jumpers ever. And, or I guess, yeah, there's only 3 guys that have ever gone 240. So, like, to be an all-time jumper, and then also to be one of the best in the world at trick, and then, you know, yeah, slalom wasn't as good, but I guess you could say that the other 2 events were just so much better than the other guys. But yeah, I
think, sorry to interrupt you, I think that was the case for anyone, though.
Yeah.
Like, think of Patrice, think of Boo Boo, think of, I mean, Jimmy, you know, like the overall at the time was that.
Yeah.
I think it just speaks to the fact that overall skiers became better and better and better, to where 2 events, which was an extreme feat at the time, now wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, there's even with them having more of like 2 events, you know, it does show when my dad's record he held that one from 2002 to 2017. So like that in of itself is nuts. And, you know, like that's where I was kind of thinking when I said no disrespect to my dad, but Adam was, for me at least, you know, the more I got into skiing, there's other people that you could probably point to, but Adam for me was the first guy that showed me, like you just said, you can be the best or try to be the best at all 3. And so Adam broke my dad's record, and it was always one of my dreams. You know, this is going back to how early did you know that you were good? And like I said, I was a bit delusional at times, you know, pushing way too far ahead, but I wanted to break the record to break my dad's record. Cause that would have been the coolest thing to me ever, to have the old world record, from my dad. And then, so when Adam broke it, I was a bit upset. But then I really started to look at what he was doing, and yeah, it inspired me. And I must say, I wrote a couple messages to him that I never sent, saying how, you know, you really inspired me. And this is when I was, you know, 19, 20, or maybe earlier. I don't even remember anymore, but I wrote a couple messages, and every time I deleted it, and I did tell him some of this at the Worlds, but you know, I just really respected what he did in terms of overall, and every time the reason why I would delete it was because at the end of the day, you know, I've noticed this with Ryan too. Like, there's a moment where you have to stop looking at people that you idolize, and then if you're going to compete against them, you have to, you know, transition. You can't go out and try to beat Ryan Dodd while thinking, you know, he's the best jumper of all time, and I idolize him more than anything, because you know, then you're just going to be on your back foot from the beginning. So, you know, like I've said now multiple times, like I really respected what Adam did. And then, yeah, you know, I think the progression now is, I mean, slalom's tough, especially for overall guys my size. And Joel's got me by a couple inches. I think he's probably 2 inches taller than I am. But even his size, like, you know, we're working our way through 41, and he's doing really well. I mean, that's my next step, is to try to get more buoys consistently at 41. And watching guys like Dane, I mean, there's no excuse when you watch that. I mean, that's impressive, right, as can be. And you know, I get to ski with him a lot because, you know, I've grown up with Janina, and she's like a big sister to me. So I've gotten to know Dane really well the last 5 years, and really, really great guy who has, you know, helped me from time to time when he's down here. And I take a lot of inspiration from him doing that. So yeah, that, I think for me, you know, get more consistent running 39, get further down 41. Tricks, just keep pushing. I mean, we're showing it the last couple of years. Our scores keep going up, and we're part of the reason we're chasing Pato. And everybody, you know, it's funny, at tournaments, I call it the Pato effect. And it's obviously there's a bunch of different guys, but the guy that I've seen it more with is Pato, where I've come in second at so many events because he'll go out and put down a huge score, or I'll go out first and put down a good score. And then everybody knows that they're chasing 12 grand. So like Moomba, I came in second. Pan Am Games, I came in second. Pan Am's, you know, even at the Masters, that had nothing to do with me in the finals, but like everybody tricked 9 grand, and then Pato tricked 12. And everybody knew what they needed, so they pushed and they fell. So, and that's the same thing that happened at the Worlds, I think. I mean, I went out and I put down a good score. Like if I tricked the 11.7 instead of the 11.2, like, you know, I would have been more confident right away that I was going to be on the podium. But then with 11.2, I was like, man, who knows? We'll see. And then everybody knew that, you know, eventually Pato was probably going to throw down a big score. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it whatever happened at the end happened. And, you know, did I benefit from people trying to chase down a huge score that hadn't happened yet? Yes. But yeah, it's an interesting little dynamic there.
Yeah, I think that to me the men's tricks was one of the most interesting events at the Worlds, because obviously similarly to the Masters, humongous cut.
Yeah.
I mean, it was what 10,560 for the top 12.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot of skiers.
I did my easy run, and I tricked 11, thinking I'll be in the top, you know, 6 or something at least, and I ended up 8th. With 11,000 points. Like that was, you know, I fell at the end. I did ski line 5 front and I last trick, and I wasn't really worried about getting it in time. So I ended up falling, and I sat there in the water and I was like, okay, cool, like finals. And by the time the dust settled, I mean, I was well in the finals, but it wasn't as easy as I thought when I fell at the beginning. Yeah.
Right. And then from there, like, 10-4, I think Jake 10-4 something was third.
Yeah.
Right? So he got third with a lower score than the cut to make the final. I mean, that was a super interesting turn of events. And yeah, possibly, you know, chasing the 12 grand was what everybody had in mind.
Yeah.
Although it was a lot strange that I think it was like 4 or 5 skiers fell on ski line 5 back coming in. So, you know, strange final, but hey, you know, it was you were in the same final, you know. What can you say?
Yeah, no, and I woke up that morning, I was so pumped because it was the finals day, and Joel and I already had this good overall battle going, and I just, you know, I couldn't really sleep the night before. Like at first, obviously in the end I fell asleep eventually, but and interesting also, like little tidbit, I remember talking to he was another neuroscientist at Red Bull. One of the times when I was in Santa Monica, and he said, we're talking about sleep and sleep patterns and everything. And he mentioned that the night before a tournament, like if you're not sleeping well, he said, don't panic because you've slept probably pretty well for the rest of the year. And that last night, same as with the skiing, like your last set doesn't make or break your tournament. So he said that last night, if you don't get good sleep, don't freak out, because you freaking out is probably going to be worse for the skiing and worse for your energy than not getting the sleep. So I was sitting there, laying there, just trying to fall asleep. I was reading some books. I started with a sports psych book, just from my sports psych, JF Menard. And eventually I transitioned into reading Harry Potter in Spanish, because that, like, I have to be so focused to try to translate that book. And so that normally knocks me out. And then I still couldn't sleep. And then eventually I just got up in the room and I started, like, I paced through my run a little bit, and it was like 11:30 at night, 12 o'clock. My dad's sleeping there in the next bed, and I'm standing in my room by myself in the dark in my underwear, just doing my run.
Ski line 5.
Oh yeah. And so then the next morning I woke up, and I normally listen to like slow music, country music, anything that is just kind of relaxing right before I trick at tournaments. And that day I listened to all my jump pump up music. I was just so ready, and everything all year had led up to that moment, and I was just so pumped to just go out and nail my run. And I knew I was going to do my big run and do the toe line front, and smoked my toe run. Like it wasn't the cleanest toe run I've ever done. Like I kind of came up a little bit on my heels on toe 5 front, but it was the fastest I've ever done it. And then I came back for hands, and obviously, you know, I had that ski line 5 front bobble, which, you know, that I'm going to work pretty hard to make sure that trick doesn't give me fits next year again. But yeah, I bobbled on ski line 5 front, but I was not going to let go. I was just so determined that I was getting this, and did ski line ski line back-to-back at the end, and ski line back-to-back ended up being like 0.1 seconds out of time, even with that big bobble. And I don't think I've ever thrown the fist that hard. Well, actually twice I've done that hard of a fist throw. Once was at under 21 Worlds, which I'm just realizing we didn't even talk about that. We've had so much other things to talk about. But I threw the fist really hard at the under 21 Worlds, and then that one was probably, I would say, topped it a little bit in terms of how loud and how excited I was. And even when I pulled out, and actually, I probably should say this, that Joel and I, we're, first of all, we're friends. Second of all, we're competitors. And obviously we're both super competitive and have the same goals. So at times, our goals conflict. Like he wanted to win the worlds and I wanted to win the worlds, and that naturally you just have that conflict. But I've never felt, and even everybody in my group, my corner said this, I've never felt more respect from Joel than when he came back after the first round of that worlds. And, I actually kind of shocked I didn't even talk about this. So that was the tricks in the first round of the prelims, was the last event of the prelims for us. And Joel went out he went out right before me. And so he ran 2 at 41. I ran 5.5. He jumped 226. I jumped 230. And then in tricks, he went out first. And I knew he was a little bit ahead in overall. And he did his big run. And man, I mean, to do that big run in the first round of the worlds, like I said, I was planning on doing my easy run. And he stomped that big run. And I wasn't, I wasn't as worried about breaking the record in that round, even though I wanted to. But then to see him do that, it was still probably mentally the hardest set that I've ever had, because knowing that he probably just broke my world record right before me at the Worlds in the first round, with that being the score that I now need to chase, was so hard. And I had to use all my brain power to not even think about it and just to go out and stick with my game plan. And I did, and I did my easy run. And obviously, it wasn't just me who was instrumental in that. Like my dad being there on the dock, like we talked about it earlier, like I always lean on his experience, and he was the first person to say, stick with your game plan. And I came back and tricked 11. He tricked 11.6. So at that point, and I knew he broke it anyway before I went out. And as soon as I finished that set, like all the emotion of him breaking my record right in front of me at the Worlds, like it really hit me. And I went over and my whole support group and just kind of just unraveled a little bit, and I'll let that emotion come out, because I was upset and I was mad, and I was also just, I don't know, I don't even know what the right word is, but like just so overwhelmed by how big of a moment that was, and how that was the hardest set that I've ever basically had to do. And then that, having, again, that support group and being able to release those emotions, it let me refocus for the next day. And that's when I came back the next day, super excited to get back into that race. But back to what I was saying, I've never felt more respect from him than in that moment, because he came, and he's an animated guy. He loves putting on a show, and so do I when the time's right. Like I said, I threw the fist so hard in the finals. But he yelled. I remember him yelling after he stood up his run, which you totally deserve because you just nailed your big run. And he pulled into the dock, and I was shocked. He didn't yell again. Like he came in, he took his ski off. Him and Matt said like, that was great. That was awesome. But it was just like I just said it. And then they left. And I was shocked. Like I just felt like, because at other times, I remember once at Corey's, I was getting ready. It was my first set of the year, and he came in and he was yelling, and it's not that big a deal, but like, it is tactics. Like there are people that do that try to get into your head, and I'm not saying that he was or he ever does, because again, that's just his personality. He loves having fun. But for him to restrain himself at the Worlds like that, I felt the respect that he wanted me to go out and to have my own moment, and to go out and ski without him, cheering in my face or anything like that. And when I came back, my whole group was like, good skiing. That was tough. And then afterwards, a couple people were like, I'm really impressed with how he handled himself. So, it was just cool. It was a cool moment in the heat of battle for us to have that.
Yeah. And the heat of battle of, the protagonist, in my view, of the Worlds, both of you guys, because let's not forget that you were also the top 2 seeds into the finals of jump.
Yeah.
So, you have someone who, both of you guys could have won tricks, both of you guys could have won jump, and both of you guys could have won overall. I mean, if this is not the ultimate expression of what, to go back to what I said before, to what Sledge sort of set the path to be, I don't know what else could be, you guys, like the only memory I have of that I have experienced personally was Natalia in Russia 11. Like that was the vibe. Like she could have won tricks and she did. She could have won jump, she did. She could have won overall and she did. Like that was the only time that I experienced something like that to that crazy level. But this was 2.
Yeah.
It was 2 people that could have done it.
Yeah. And it's almost, I'm glad that we're talking about it as much as we are, because, I think back on the longest tennis match that it was a couple years ago, and, everybody remembers the guy that won. But if you ask, who won the longest tennis match of all time, nobody knows. I mean, not nobody, but not as many people. Yeah. So when we finished, I was kind of like, man, I just lost I finished second at the best overall event or battle of all time. And it sucks because both of us in that pace that we were on, we were both on world record pace. And at the end of the day, and that kind of is the beauty of me winning tricks is, I felt like we both deserved a world title after those worlds, and and we both left with one. So it's awesome for us because we both put our heart and souls out there, and we both walked away with the ultimate prize in our sport. And I mean, I wanted to win overall, and overall, in my opinion, is the king event. So that's everything resets now, and we're both gonna probably go back and work on new stuff, and we're gonna be pushing just as hard for the next one. But it was an amazing event. And then to touch on that jump final, first of all, the first round was sick. I mean, the headwind that I got, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what deals I made with who to get that, but I did. It just felt like it's just one of those moments where, again, people believe in signs or they don't, and I'm not necessarily one that says, oh yeah, this is a sign, that's a sign. But I just felt like that day, every now and then you just feel like this presence, this support, and just that headwind to come out of nowhere whenever nobody else really got it. And for me to literally float longer than anybody in the tournament, and to go longer than the splash eye, like that was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Float longer than the splash eye was expecting, because just to give a bit of context for those who don't jump, like the splash eye is the system we use for measuring jumps, and from the time there's a sensor on the ramp, and by the time the sensor is activated, this computer system has a time in which it expects someone to land. And you basically went past that. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So obviously like that headwind helped, and I had a ton of speed into the bottom of the ramp. It was kind of like my jump at Fluid, where I just coming in, you just have those jumps where like, oh, this is good. Like this is going to go well. Right. And then, carried through the jump, and that one actually felt long. The one at Fluid didn't, but that one felt long. And I saw that 70-meter buoy pass by, and it was funny. I rewatched it on the webcast, and Joel and Jacinta were commentating with Tony, and it was funny because I landed, and I don't know why, because I do want to say something about throwing the fist at some point, but I didn't throw the fist at all. I think I was so locked in still, and I knew I could have a better jump. Even watching the video later, I wasn't late, and I could have had more speed. But then the score came out after my set because they couldn't measure it during, but I knew it was big, and I knew that the headwind wasn't going to stick around, so I just wanted them to keep going. So I finished it, ended up passing on the next jump, which actually at first had a better setup, so I really would have wanted to see where that one would have gone. And then for the score to come up, and it was 69.9. I got conflicting reports about, they went back and measured it again and said it was 70. And then they said they couldn't use the second measurement because the first measurement was actually during the tournament. So I would like to think that I went 230 at the Worlds. In the end, it was 229 point whatever. But that jump as a whole, and watching it on the video was really cool from shore, because you can hear it as I'm like, kind of like that Felix jump that we talked about. You can hear it as I'm in the air. Like people are like, whoa, it was like just, you just heard it. And
I can say I contributed to that when I was there.
No, actually, it's funny. In the who took the video? I think it was Alex Samoylov. And right at the end of the video, when I land, you're in the corner of the video, and you're doing like you're in the air, like just shaking your hand, like that was sick. But yeah, no, that was an awesome jump. And then to go to the finals, and like I said, as much as I'm trying to move past the idolization phase, like I still think Ryan and Freddie and my dad and those guys are just the coolest when it comes to jump, obviously. And I remember Ryan going out last, and there was a moment where I was thinking, holy smokes, could I actually be top seed? And I kept thinking, would I rather have Ryan go right out before me because I want to stand on the dock with him, or do I want him to go out after so that I can put something out and then go again? And then to be able to share that afterwards with him winning, and I didn't jump as well as I wanted to in the finals, but just that whole setup was awesome. And Greg Desfont from Waterski Nation, we did an interview for Tricker of the Month in his last issue, which also, by the way, his spread on overall was awesome. Like, they was so cool, like multiple pages and pictures and just the whole write-up. It was really good. I really appreciate that. But then he asked me, the last question was, what is your perfect set? And kind of like, he meant more of, who's driving, where you at, like, what's the best set that you could possibly envision? And I said, this is not the answer that you're looking for, but I said, give me that last jump set at the Worlds one more time and give everybody a 7 mile an hour perfect headwind. Because we had that weird kind of cross head that was, it was kind of tough to figure it out. I was overshooting the boat in the finals and probably trying to go too hard and couldn't figure out my timing. And it was just the whole setup of, getting down to the dock and having 2 gold medals on the line, and Ryan going out, Freddie going out, Joel going out, me being the last skier of the entire Worlds, and just to Les is behind the boat, and Felipe Leal, who I also have a cool story with him from the Junior Masters, my last year when I won, when I was actually on the water, and I won like being last off the dock. And I remember him in the boat, and I think I went 175. And before he could get the score out, he was just jumping around. Like I was like, dude, tell me the score. Like, I want to know if I won. But so him in the boat, so that was cool. And like, just to have that whole anticipation. And we talked, about it at the beginning about tricks. We talked about it with hockey, and having that build up and that lead up into this battle that you're about to go into. And that jump event final was literally like what everybody dreams about growing up. Like, you want to be in that moment. You want to be the top seed. You want to have the pressure. You want to have so much on the line, because, my sports psych say that all the time. Like, when I talk about pressure and feeling pressure, like, JF, I just mentioned him earlier, like, he's said to me multiple times, like, you signed up for this. This is, as much as the pressure gets to you and it makes you nervous and you're sometimes afraid of failure, like, at the end of the day, like, those are the moments that we train for. Like that trick final, waking up and being so excited, like, that's what we live for. And when you really focus on that and you accept that, and you're not afraid, yes, I could fail, but that's not the point. Like, the point is that I've been given this opportunity. That's when it just became so fun. And, I didn't jump as well as I wanted, but the set itself holds a special place in my heart, for sure.
No, what a moment. What a moment. I can tell you, as a spectator, it was among the finest, type, like, skiing level that I've ever seen. The backstory, the athletes in the older versus newer generation. There were so many storylines that you could have just like cherry picked whichever, and it would have been great.
Yeah, it was an awesome Worlds as a whole. Like, thanks to the Travers family, it was so good.
Yeah, no, it really was. It really was. After a series of not so awesome Worlds, I think they not only improved it, but they also brought a very, very good one.
Yeah.
Now, I want to get to what the future holds.
Okay.
But before that, there's a couple of things we didn't touch on that I think it'd be interesting to touch on. First of all, we didn't speak about it at length, but you started skiing representing Austria.
Yep.
And then shifted to representing Canada.
Yep.
What brought to that decision? And just curious.
So there's a lot of different aspects as to how that happened. So I started in Austria, because that's where we would go in the summers. We would always spend time over there in the summer. And like I said, it's kind of where I think I found my first love of skiing, was hanging out with all the kids there. So it just naturally progressed to where when I was 12, I went to the Europeans for the first time. And again, like traveling with the team and all that is just so fun. And then it was also partly because I could make all the teams when I was younger. So 13, I made the Open Worlds team, skied in Canada at my dad's home worlds, with him and also with my mom. So, that being the first family, I know Russell and Adam have skied together. Russell and Anna have skied together at the Worlds, I think. And also Adam and Corey skied at that same Worlds.
Yeah.
But to be the first family, like mother, child, and father, that was a tough way of putting that. Anyway, to be the first family as a whole to ski together was super special. And my dad didn't ski as well as he would have wanted. I know that was one point in his career where I think if he had won the Worlds, like that could have been a nice send-off moment. Not that he would have stopped, but yeah. And just to have that, to have all the interviews that we did beforehand, and, people asking me, you're going to beat your dad. And I was like, no, I hope not, because I hope he wins and this and that. And just to have that moment was something that I wouldn't have been able to do. I wasn't, like, I know Neely made the team when she was 11 or something, but I wasn't at that stage yet. And yeah, so, that was another one of the reasons I skied for Austria. Also, like back when I started, they actually had really good funding for juniors, and not that I cared at all about money at the time, but I think my parents kind of knew that. And eventually I just always planned that I wanted to, at 18, I wanted to switch and I wanted to ski with my dad. And, people from the US are always like, dude, what the heck? Like, you never even thought about skiing for the US? And, it's just something that I always wanted. I wanted to be with my dad. I wanted to be on the Canadian team with him and with all these people that had always skied at my house. Like I have pictures of, Whitney, Jason, Aaron Rathy, who was another guy that was such a good junior skier.
Wow.
And Ryan, and they're all 14 years old. And then I'm standing there and I don't know how old I must have been, like 6. Yeah, so just to have those guys around, like those were all kids that I looked up to, and I wanted to ski with them and ski with my dad. And it also helps. I wasn't thinking about this at 18, but the funding that we get in Canada is amazing. It really helps for, it's hard to get for sure. Like, you have to be top 8 at the Worlds and then also beat out some of the other guys. So it's a bit disappointing in a way that we have to have it like that, because it makes it so that at times, you're competing against your own team members, even if they're not in the same gender. Like at the end of the day, if 8 girls all ski better than all the guys, none of us get funding. So it just, it makes it tough. But you can't complain when, we have some of the best funding in the world. But yeah.
And some of the best skiers in the world, not surprisingly.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that definitely helps. Or it hurts in that sense, but it also helps in terms of like how good our team is. But yeah, so that was always something that I wanted. And actually it's funny that we're talking about this, because I guess, people always ask me, where do you feel like you're from? And I really do feel like I'm from all three. I'm born in America and I've grown up in America, or in the US, and yet I played hockey growing up, and I wanted to be a professional hockey player, which in a way makes me feel more Canadian at times. And I have this huge pride, or sense of pride, for skiing for Canada. And we have the core group of skiers that are down here that people are like, oh, you guys are the Florida Canadian kids. And it's,
right.
it's all fair. I mean, that's fair enough, but that's kind of what it takes to be a professional skier, is to live in Florida. And we just happen to have parents that moved down here. And I feel super proud to be Canadian at the international tournaments. And, at the same time, I feel proud to have skied for Austria and to go home to Austria. Like, I've said multiple times, that was one of the moments that I thought about right before I broke my first world record, was being with everybody in Austria. And then, I'm a Florida boy. I'm an American kid, and I have so many things that make me an American as well. So, yeah, it's something that, people that are international do understand, but I really do feel like I'm from all three.
Yeah, no, it's and because of that, it makes sense that the shift wasn't even like as big of a deal as it might appear at first sight, right?
Yeah.
Like, so no, that makes perfect sense. I don't think you could have explained it more beautifully. And then the final question I have is regarding the hat that you're wearing, which obviously, nobody will be able to see because this is audio. But yeah, you're wearing a Red Bull hat. What is the involvement with Red Bull? How long have you been supported? And I think you've already spoken quite a bit about the type of opportunities that is given you. But how did that opportunity come about?
Yeah, so I was sponsored early, actually, really, really early. So I was about 12, 13 at the time when I started to, get the interest of, this could be a possibility. And I mean, hey, I don't have to sugarcoat it. I mean, I think a lot of people know that my mom was one of the first 6 athletes sponsored by Red Bull, and I may have been the first, if not the second, female athlete ever sponsored by Red Bull. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, obviously that is a huge in. Like, you get your foot in the door for sure. That being said, at the end of the day, like, Red Bull is known for being the best at what they do. So,
gotta perform.
Yeah, exactly. So I may have got my foot in the door that way, but my mom always made sure, especially when I was younger, to tell me, like, if you didn't feel like you deserved this before today, and there was always a moment like that, she said, you definitely deserve it. And, I won the Junior Europeans when I was 12, and then my mom retired in the year before. And then after that was when I, went and talked to them, and they said, well, if we have one Llewellyn that's retiring, why don't we take a chance on another one? And that was one of the best things that could have happened for my career. Yeah, I mean, after that, I had to keep performing to keep the sponsorship, obviously. But then they, like you just were saying, they helped me so much to maintain that level. Whether, what I said before with my knee injury, coming back way stronger than I thought possible. And then also having the avenue to work with sports psychologists to get an early, appreciation for what that brings to the table. Nutritionists, being around the other athletes, that's always super cool. Like, especially, we have our Southeast region here, which I'm actually sponsored out of Austria, because back when I was skiing for the team, that's when I got sponsored. So my manager is back there, but I get to kind of be the adopted child for the Southeast US region too. So I get to hang out with, Megan Ethel and Gunther and Mike Dowdy and Parks Bonifay and Brian Grubb and, a couple of the other athletes too, like surfer Caroline Marks, who's one of the best female surfers on the planet. She was the youngest person to ever make it on the pro tour. So just being able to, see different people in different sports and to learn from them. I mean, it's a weird aspect that you don't fully appreciate at face value, but when you look back, you realize how much things like that meant. And then, it's also one of the coolest things in the world, first of all, to be able to say that you're sponsored, but then also all the little things that you get to do because of that. Like I just said with the athletes, just last week, my dad and I went down to Miami. They were doing this little party for the Formula One race next year in Miami. And we went down, got to meet this kid, Sean Kelly, who is a MotoGP racer. He's in the second tier. And just hung out with him, another cool person. And then also got to do like the racing simulators there and stuff. So it makes being a professional athlete so much more fun when you have this group that really supports you, really gives you every opportunity to thrive. And then, you get to experience not only your success, but then also other athletes and other sports success as well.
Yeah, no, I think you described what I think everyone envisions being sponsored by Red Bull is, right? Like resources, expectations, but also fun and opportunities,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Look, Dorien, I think generally I give room for people to be thankful, and I think you've already done that plenty. Obviously more place for gratitude if you need to, but maybe you can tie that to this, like what is next season looking like, which I know as a overall skier there's an even year and an odd year. Yeah. Meaning there's a year with Worlds and there's a year without Worlds.
Yeah, well,
so next year is without Worlds.
Yeah, interesting that that is how it's been for a while, even the last couple of years. I'd like to think that we're changing that, and I think between Sledge and a lot of the, like Coleman and myself and Joel and Rob and everybody, there's been this increase in people being interested in overall, and we're taking advantage of that because my dad and my mom and we pitched to Red Bull 2 years ago now that we wanted to do an overall tour, and they really liked the idea, and they actually were the ones that said we don't want to do a one-off tournament, we want to do a tour. Like if we're going to be involved with this, there has to be a tour champion. And so now the last 2 years we've had the Austria tournament, so it was the Austrian Open, which was, like I said, only overall. And then this year we added the American Open, which was the second tour stop. And now next year we're planning on having 4 tour stops. And that is when things I think could get more serious, is as soon as we have these 4 stops, Red Bull actually wants to get involved to the point where they're going to be the title sponsor. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name of the tour yet because we weren't allowed to say that last year, but basically it'll be the Red Bull blank tour. So it's going to be, I think for our sport, it should be awesome having the backing of them and, being able to use their resources. And then also having 4 tour stops is going to be awesome for us overall skiers. And, like you said, I think we'll have a ton of narratives come out of that all year. It'll be super difficult to overall is hard enough to get right on one day. Now you got to get it right for a couple tournaments. And yeah, I think right now it looks like the way we want to do it at least would be tour stop in England, one in Austria, one in France, and then one in the US and maybe one in Canada as well. So that would be really cool. Everything so far is looking really good for that for next year. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about that, and it makes the year a bit busier, but I mean, hey, that's why we do this to go to pro events, to compete against each other, and like I said, to strive together to get better.
Yeah, the definition of competing.
Yep.
Look, big announcement. Love it. Yeah. I love it. I think if overall is as exciting as what I experienced watching the Worlds this year, I couldn't be looking more forward to than a tour like this that it's overall all the time. I was also looking very forward to interviewing you, and man, I don't want to say that I go into interviews with expectations, but of course you have an idea of who you have in front of you and what you'll hear, and this went far beyond what I was expecting. So I want to take the opportunity to thank you. This was a true pleasure. You're one of the big names in our sport, regardless of what Les says of how big you are. And I'm glad you shared your time with me.
Yeah, no.
So
thank you. Yeah, no, like I said before, I went through something this year that other people experienced, that it's becoming more common for people to talk about it. And I told you before we started, this podcast could go in so many different directions, because I just feel like between that and between other things I've experienced in life, like, I could have either gone really, really happy and made everybody laugh, or I could have gone, a little more serious. And that's kind of the route we took. And I think that was really important for me to, share my experience. And for anybody out there that, has ever had something similar or is going through something similar, to know that, there are ways to, help yourself and to get through that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, look, again, thank you for sharing that. And hey, don't think that this is a one-off, right?
Yeah.
Like we might meet again in 5 or 6 months and have another chat.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. Also, sorry, I've said this so many times now. I just want to really quickly say this. In terms of what I kept saying about throwing the fist, if whatever sport it is, like hockey, skiing, whatever, like in hockey, you only have so many goals that you get to score in your career. Like no matter how long your career is, even Wayne Gretzky, who had more goals than anybody, and Alexander Ovechkin, who is the exact example of what I'm about to say, like no matter how many goals you're going to end up scoring, there's a finite limit, and there's only so many PBs that you get to jump or you get to slalom or get to trick. And I've thrown the fist at times and people are like, oh, I even did a hand drag once, which, at Masters, which, is maybe a little much at times. But at the end of the day, like, you only get so many times to really experience true bliss in sport or in life. And you just celebrate it. Like, I mean, even that 230, I mean, I had another jump, so I was still focused, but I could have gone nuts at that. I could have been so excited, or when I broke the world record, or even at the Worlds and tricks, like, you just take those moments and enjoy those moments, because you never know, when your last amazing, perfect moment is going to be.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'm all about a good fist pump, or, anything that shows the passion and the dedication that were behind that, 6 minute set.
Yeah. And like I said, Alexander Ovechkin, like for hockey, he's trying to be the goal scorer with the most goals of all time in the NHL. And if you watch him, even a couple nights ago, he scored a goal, and it would look like it was his first goal in the NHL. And the guy has more goals than any active player, and he probably by the end of his career will have more goals than any player in the history of the league. And yet he celebrates every goal like it's his first or his last.
Mm-hmm. What a lesson.
Yep.
What a lesson. Dorien, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.